Good morning, everyone. How are you? Right on. My name is Grant Moninger. I'm the Director of Programming at the American Cinematheque. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 20th annual of the Golden Globe non-English language nominee film nominee symposium here at the American Cinematheque. We've had an embarrassment of talent come through the doors over the past 20 years, and we couldn't be thrilled to be bringing it back once again here in 2023. Real briefly, I would like to thank all the American Cinematheque members who help support the nonprofit organization. If you're not a member, please think of joining the American Cinematheque. Everything that you donate goes right back into the organization, where we program films throughout Los Angeles, including the Aero Theater where we're at right now, the Los Feliz 3, and in 2023, we return to the Egyptian Theater. So thank you so much. And it is my pleasure right now to welcome the president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, Helen Hona, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Great to be here on a Sunday morning. Thank you for all coming out here. First of all, welcome to the Golden Globes non-English language film symposium. We took a year off, as you know, so we're so grateful to be back here. And thank you all for coming out. First, let me thank the American Cinematheque. They've been absolutely incredible, so thank you so much. And our own member, Andre Guimond, for pulling this off. Thank you. It's great to be back after the pandemic, and as you all know, our year off, so we're really truly grateful to be here, and I'm thrilled to see so many of you come out here. As you know, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association supports American Cinematheque as part of our expansive philanthropy program. We have enjoyed a really great relationship and a history together, and we're thrilled to have this success and really them seeing achieve in building a diverse and engaged film community through immersive film curation, conversation, and presentation. The American Cinematheque has succeeded in building that bridge between filmmakers and audiences and looking at film history and contemporary cinema. We're incredibly grateful for this continued partnership. I'd also like to thank them for their help and support in organizing this event today, of course, and the running film series that we had all week. Today, we're incredibly excited to have this panel discussion with our Golden Globe nominated filmmakers in person. We have Park Chan-wook. Thank you so much for being here. And we also have SS Rajamouli, director of RRR. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you both so much for being here in person. Joining us via Zoom, we have Edward Berger, director of All Quiet on the Western Front.
Hello.
And Lukas Dhont, director of Close.
Hi, everyone.
And Santiago Mitre, director of Argentina 1985. Out of the amazing diversity and quality of non-English language films eligible for the 80th Golden Globes, these 5 projects won over our voting body and are 5 nominees that will be highlighted at the awards ceremony on January 10th. Each director has instilled their heart and really incredible emotion in these powerful stories, and they have resonated with us in unprecedented ways. Each are worthy of a Golden Globe, and I hope you will all join me in welcoming them today. So thank you again. I can't wait to hear this discussion, but before I go, please allow me to introduce our moderator for the symposium, Jim Hempel. And again, thank you for joining us, and I'm so happy to be back. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm really excited to introduce these 5 filmmakers. I love all 5 of these movies so much, and it's going to be great to talk with all of them. So first up, let me bring up the director of Decision to Leave, Park Chan-wook. And he'll be joined by his interpreter, Lewis. the director of RRR, SS Rajamouli. And hopefully joining us on the big screen behind me here via Zoom, we have All Quiet on the Western Front director, Edward Berger.
Hello.
Close director, Lukas Dhont.
Hi, everyone.
And Argentina 1985 director, Santiago Mitre.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
So I guess I want to start at the beginning with a question about the origins of these movies and the writing process, because one of the things I love about all these films is they're all part of recognizable traditions. You've got, a war movie, coming of age, action, film noir, and, journalistic procedural movie. And yet they're all so original and clearly the, result of your personal passions. So I guess I'll start with you with RRR. Where do you even get started writing a movie like this, that's so many different kinds of movies in one? What was the initial starting point?
There are two parts to that. Mixing so many genres together into one film has been an Indian way of storytelling for a long time. So that comes naturally to all the Indian storytellers. And particularly the idea of RRR, I always like the idea of a multi-starrer, not just bringing two stars together, but bringing two heroes together. From my childhood, I loved the idea of whenever I read different stories, if I fall in love with those characters, in my mind, I would bring those characters together and weave my own scenes around them. So I was always fascinated with that idea. And India had a long freedom struggle against British for almost 90 years. And there were many freedom fighters who fought for the liberty of the country. So the two characters are Lursita Ramaraj and Komram Bhim, who are the part of this film, are from my part of the country who did the same. But there were interesting coincidences in their lives. We don't know what happened to them for a period of 2-3 years. So I thought, okay, this is a nice chance for me to build a fictional tale of friendship between them in that period of time.
And for Decision to Leave, here you're working in film noir and kind of crime fiction. What was the initial spark for you? What was when you started out writing Decision to Leave? What kind of genre did you want to work in? What was about the idea that appealed to you?
예, 저도 역시 두 가지를 결합시키는 방식으로 출발을 했습니다.
I also wanted to approach combining two different elements, like how Rajamouli was also saying as well.
하나는 경찰이 등장하는 필름 노아 이야기를 해보겠다라는 것이었는데 그것에 영감을 주었던 작품은 스웨덴의 그 형사 소설 시리즈였어요. 또 다른 non English 작품이죠.
First element was trying to tell a story where you see a detective in a film noir, and the starting point inspiration was a detective series, which also is a non-English element from Sweden.
마르틴 베크라고 하는 형사가 고정적으로 등장하는 10개의 시리즈인데요. 제가 그것을 너무 좋아해서 거기서 영감을 받은 데서 출발을 했습니다.
And the story tells a story of Martin Beck. It's a 10 episode story of a detective that I'm a huge fan of, and that's where the initial inspiration began.
물론 지금은 그 흔적이 거의 남아있지 않아서 이 영화를 보신 마틴 백 시리즈의 팬들은 뭐 무슨 영감을 받았다는 소리야? 정말 이해할 수 없네라고 하시겠어요.
Of course, the final product has no resemblance to where the inspiration started. So if any fans out there who's a big fan of Martin Beck will be very confused on what kind of reference I'm trying to even make.
또 하나의 원천은 제가 The Little Drama Girl이라는 BBC를 위한 시리즈를 연출하느라고 런던에 머물던 시절에 좀 향수병에 걸려서 한국의 노래들 예전에 어렸을 때 들었던 노래들을 유튜브로 많이 들었습니다.
Another source of inspiration was when I was staying in London when working for a BBC series, Little Drummer Girl. I got a severe homesick and started listening to all this old Korean music that I used to look up on YouTube as to pass time while I was spending time in London.
그때 들었던 노래가 안개라는 곡이었어요. The Mist. 그 곡을 들으면서 사랑 영화 안개 속에서 안타깝게 헤어진 남녀의 이야기를 다루는 사랑 영화를 만들고 싶다는 생각이 들었어요. 이 노래를 사용하고 싶었으니까요.
And the song I often got back to is the song Mist that you hear in the film. And as I was listening to that song, I thought of a romance story talking about a man and a woman who has this unfortunate series of events that lead them to this roller coaster of a story that they go in surrounded in this mist.
그래서 이 두 가지를 합쳐보자는 생각이 그 다음에 들었고, 그래서 결국은 용의자와 사랑에 빠지는 형사의 이야기라는 그런 틀이 만들어졌던 겁니다.
And after these two elements, at one point I decided the inspiration came to merge two different ideas. And that's how I got to the basic format of a detective story where he falls in love with a suspect.
Now, Edward, in case of All Quiet on the Western Front, you're obviously dealing with a very famous novel that has been filmed a couple of times. What did you want to bring to the book? What was your initial reason for wanting to adapt that novel?
Yeah, I got a call about 2-3 years ago from my good friend and producer Malte Grunert, who said, "Do you think if I could get the rights to this book, would you be interested?" And I thought, damn, why didn't I have that idea? It was a little bit, it was almost so too obvious. It was sitting there for 90 years. A German book. It's the most successful German book ever written. I think it's sold to many countries and everyone around the world knows it, right? And I'm sure in the audience, people have at least heard the title. And the big hurdle, as you say, it was filmed twice before, especially the famous version from the 30s. But I immediately felt this deep urge to at least think about this film and see if I could make it, and what my way in was, because I'd read it when I was 15, again in my 20s, and it's just part of our, part of our heritage, our culture in a way. And so it felt, and then I went home and discussed it with the family, and my daughter, who was 17 at the time, immediately turned around when she's usually utterly uninterested in what I'm about to do next, right? When the subject comes to what my next film will be, she walks away from the table. But this was the only time, and a 17-year-old girl, 90 years after publication of that book, where she turned around and said, "If you have the chance to make that book, you have to make it." And for me, the main reason was that I usually see these films made from an American side or British side by American or British filmmakers. And I always wondered why these films feel so different to what I associate with the subject matter. And then I realized while I was thinking about it, well, it's because it's the other side. It's first of all, America was victorious in the war. It probably leaves a very different feeling. And it was also roped into this war against their will. And it liberated Europe from fascism. And that leaves a totally different legacy and heritage in the filmmakers, that in the generations to come, in everyone who sits in this audience, and the generations of filmmakers that came. And to me, there's nothing in America, you can look back on this period probably with a sense of honor and pride. And in Germany, you can only look back at it with shame and guilt and a sense of responsibility towards that history. And I thought, okay, I grew up this way and I have that in me, in my DNA. And every decision I'm going to take on set with all my crew, it's going to inform that film. And ideally, it's going to make a very different film from an American or British war film, or at least a bit of difference. And it could be an interesting addition to the genre and share it with audiences around the world. So that was the main motivation to tackle that hurdle.
And Lucas, in the case of Close, you've got such a beautiful coming of age story. And I'm curious for you, starting out on something like that, where does it begin? Does it begin with the characters? Does it begin with certain issues you want to explore?
I think Close actually began by a friend recommending me a book by an American psychologist called Deep Secrets. And Nayo Bue is her name. She followed 150 boys between the age of 13 and 18. And at the age of 13, she asked them to talk about their male friendships. And what is incredibly beautiful is that at that age, they talk about each other in the most loving, tender way. Like they dare to use the word love when they talk about each other. And then she asks these boys the same questions at 16, 17, 18. And you read how these boys all of a sudden don't dare to speak with that same vocabulary anymore. That vocabulary that for them, they have understood that in this culture, it is linked to the soft, to the feminine, to emotion, and it's something that they want to take distance from. It's actually also the same time that the suicide rate for boys goes up 4 times as much as for girls. And so I think that for me, when I read that research, I felt incredibly connected to these boys because at that same moment in time, I also started to fear intimacy with other boys. And I took distance from some friendships that actually I realized afterwards I didn't want to take distance from. And what this research showed me is that something that I had always thought of as an experience because I was queer wasn't at all about being queer. It was about being a young man growing up. It was about masculinity. And from the moment that I think I realized that I wanted to make a film about a beautiful, tender friendship between 2 young men and how we live in a society that eventually drives them apart. And I think that friendship and the heartbreak linked to friendship is something that we have all felt. And it's something that I hadn't seen expressed in a film yet, that sense of heartbreak linked to friendship. And I really wanted to find a way to give a cinematic approach, a cinematic journey to that wound.
Now, Santiago, for Argentina 1985, one of the things I love about that movie is it kind of reminds me of a lot of the great classic procedural movies, things like All the President's Men. I'm curious for you, did you have films like that in your mind as models or reference points, or what was the kind of template for you setting out to write that movie?
Yes, it was. All the President's Men was one of the films that we spoke to the most, I think, during the process of preparing the film. We wanted this sort of vibe, tension, and that those political thrillers from the 70s and 80s had. And it was the sense of urgency and tension that we were wanting to bring to this film. But also it's a film that it's dealing with a major political and judicial event in Argentina, that it's so important, that it built the new democracy in Argentina, and it's dealing also with the horrors of the dictatorship. But at the same time, to work with such a big subject, it can be a little bit intimidating for filmmakers, you know. And for me, during the whole process was like to keep the balance between the truth and the respect, and and how to tell these the implications or the historical implications of this event, but in the same layer to bring the cinematic experience at the same level. Because if you're talking about history, about democracy, about justice, about all these huge topic, and you do it, well, you cannot forget about cinema, because cinema and the tools of cinema are the things that are going to make this well, this subject or this historical event come back to life. So it was all the time thinking in history and in cinema, and how cinema could bring well, history back to life, or could potentiate, I don't know if the word exists, sometimes I'm translating from Spanish directly, the values of this event.
Well, the sense of detail in the movie is really extraordinary. And I'm curious what your research process was like. Were you able to talk to any of the people who were actually involved in these events when they were happening?
Yes, I spoke to all the people that I could. Many of the people who did the trial, they are still alive and still working, and still some of them are still important people in justice or in politics in Argentina. So it was very interesting to spoke to them, and because beside the details and all the historical details that were super important in the film, but they were not that difficult to get. To talk to the people, you can get the human dimension of what you need to write, you know, and then during this process to be able to talk to them, I realized that I was starting to build a connection and a sort of friendship in some cases, and I was writing characters that these people were going to watch in the film. So I began to write with a lot more responsibility, because I wanted that them feel not that everything was true because we are doing cinema, but the essence of what they lived was true. So for me, that it was the first time I was working in a historical piece, historical film. That was something that I realized during the writing and then during the shooting, and of course when I showed the film to them for the first time. That it was super important that you are writing about persons that are going to watch your film eventually. So all that part of the research was very interesting, and I discovered that I did not imagine before starting.
Now, Edward, All Quiet on the Western Front is also an epic historical film with a lot of rich period detail. So what kind of research did you do, and how important was historical accuracy for you with that movie?
It was, in this case, I don't think it's always important. For example, I love the shot of the Converse shoes in Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette, yeah, and that's obviously not accurate. But in this case, this movie felt like it had to be accurate. For somehow the authenticity and the experience that I wanted to throw the audience, sort of grab them by the lapel and sort of drag them through this story with the main character, Paul Bäumer, who's a young boy thrown into the trenches, and within seconds he loses his innocence and youth and ideals and values and slowly becomes a killing machine. So that was the main agenda, to tell that story and frame it with accurate surroundings in terms of production design. So we researched how were the trenches built. We had a lot of images. There's actually a wonderful documentary by Peter Jackson, We Shall Not Grow Old. That was a great reference in terms of, because it was very much about young kids going off to, like, from the English side and basically raising their hand and lying about their age, and at age 15 saying, I want to go to this adventure, because back then they didn't have television and news, and they did think it was an adventure, and they'd go to a foreign country and have a fight. And so that was, but and in that documentary, for example, you see the teeth are complete. That was one thing that I immediately recognized. The teeth are completely malformed, and they didn't have proper dentists yet. Yeah? So that was, for example, an example that we implemented in makeup. You know, just we yellowed everyone's teeth and made them a bit more crooked. It's something that probably, you know, a lot of times within an American cast you can't do. So that's wonderful. So to have these, so we implemented all these things from makeup, costume, the tanks that are driving. It's all based on research. You can find footage on YouTube about the Saint-Chamond tanks, they're called, the French tanks, how they drive over trenches. And so YouTube is a great source, but also letters. And one of these letters actually made its way into the film also. I read hundreds of letters while writing. And one of them is there's two young men sitting on the toilet, basically. One of them is reading the other a letter that he got from home. And it's basically, I basically found it in this archive of thousands of letters, and I read through hundreds, like half of them. And that was a gemstone that I thought, oh, I have to use that because it felt so beautiful. And even the language, the type of accent that they have, and the type of not very educated language that was written quite crudely. And I took that, and that formed that character a lot as well.
Now, RRR is, in a sense, a historical film as well, but very different approach to history. And you touched on this a little bit in your first answer, but I'm curious what your kind of guiding principles were as far as historical accuracy and detail versus places where you were going to just go completely off into acts of imagination.
Yeah, the story itself is quite fictional. But as a filmmaker, I have to make the people believe that it is happening. They needed believe that it actually happened the same way, but when they're watching the film, they have to get invested in that. For that purpose, there has to be many things that are accurate. We did a lot of research in terms of production design. What are the materials, what is the architecture, what are the vehicles, what are the costumes of the Englishmen, of the Indians, of the poor man, of the middle class men, all those kinds of things. A lot of research has been done. But because it's a fictional movie, I had the liberty of not exactly sticking to the accuracies. For example, the motorcycles that you have seen, we based the film in 1920s. That motorcycles were not available until 1930s or 1940s kind of stuff. But we took liberties in adjusting the time period to suit the needs of the story.
Well, I was listening to you on Joe Dante's podcast, and you were mentioning that a couple of your favorite movies are Tarantino's Django Unchained and Inglourious Basterds. Like, how did the approach that those movies took to history influence you?
I mean, glad that you mentioned when I was when I was watching Inglourious Basterds, and the story of the cinema theater is doomed because the Hitler is there, and historically we know Hitler didn't die there, and these people are trying to kill Hitler. So it feels like they're heading to a doom. And suddenly a machine gun pops up and Hitler is shot down, dead in the theater. And I thought, wow, it just blew my mind. It made a big impact on me. For one thing, we know that it's a fictional story, and you don't need to stick to historical accuracies when you're making a fictional story. And the main important thing from a director is to make the audience feel certain emotion, whatever he intends to do. That is what he needs to concentrate upon. For historical accuracies, people would be reading textbooks or going to see documentaries, or those need to be accurate, not a film. So it was a big eye-opener for me, which is one of the basic things, bringing Bhim and Ram together, which never happened in actual history. So that gave me confidence that I can go ahead and write this story.
Now, moving back over to Decision to Leave, what I love about that movie is that you've got these two characters who are, through much of the movie, hiding things from each other. Sometimes they're hiding things from themselves. Sometimes the audience is ahead of them. Sometimes we're a little behind them. What was your thinking in terms of the conception of those characters and coming at them from a kind of such an odd, not the opposite of straightforward in terms of the way they express their emotions?
이 영화의 주인공 두 사람은 자기가 상대방에 대해서 가진 호감을 표현할 수 없는 처지에 놓인 거죠. 그리고 또 그런 성격의 사람들입니다.
So the two characters you see in the film, they are in a situation where they're not at liberty to be able to be direct with their emotion or allowed to express their emotion, but also they're not the type of people who are good at being direct with how they feel to express their emotions.
현대의 사람들은 또 현대에 만들어진 사랑에 관한 영화들은 그런 감정을 솔직하게 드러내는데 아주 대담하죠.
People in modern days and the films that's made these days that reflects the current modernity of how to portray love. The films are really good at being direct and explicit about how the emotions are communicated, and they're really good at that.
그래서 이번에는 그렇지 않은 사람들에 대한 영화를 만들어 보고 싶었어요.
So this time I wanted to make a film where it's everything but that, something that's not so direct and so expressive.
자기 감정을 감춰야 되는 사람들의 얘기죠.
It's a story about people who are in need to not express their feelings.
그런데 관객조차도 그것을 몰라서는 안 되니까 그것이 이제 어려운 게임이 되는 겁니다.
But we also need to make sure that the audience is able to see what they're feeling. Then that's when the crazy balance game starts.
서로의 향한 감정을 관객은 알아야 하고 이 인물들은 자기 자신의 감정조차도 잘 몰라 합니다. 근데 그것조차도 관객은 또 알아야 하죠.
So the feelings the characters have towards each other, the audience needs to know, but the characters should not know even how they feel. And even the fact that they don't know, audience need to know that.
그런 것을 표현하기 위해서는 결국 미묘한 그 표정의 변화들, 눈동자의 약간의 움직임, 뭐 이런 것으로 표현을 하는 수밖에 없는 거예요.
And in order to be able to portray those complicated emotion and situation, the subtleness and all of that needs to come from the detailed and small stutter of words or little tremble in eyes and the little details of hints in emotion and expressions.
예를 들어서 내가 저 남자를 본다. 그럴 때 그 남자가 잠깐 다른 곳을 볼 때, 나 말고 다른 곳을 볼 때 그때 마음껏 저 남자를 들여다보는 거죠. 그러다가 그 남자의 시선이 나한테 오면 재빨리 피해야 됩니다. 여태까지 안 봤던 것처럼 그런 식의 시선의 게임이 이 영화에서 가장 중요했습니다.
For example, when I am looking into that man that I'm into, I need to find the moment to stare at him and glaze at him while he's looking somewhere else to take advantage of that situation. But the moment he turns and you notice that he's about to look at you to look somewhere else, and just changing the viewpoints and the way the angles and the POVs are done is how that was achieved.
다시 말해서 제가 이 영화에서 해보고 싶었던 것은 영화라는 매체가 정말 영화이게 만들어주는 가장 기본적인 것들 있잖아요. 샷과 리버스 샷, 포인트 오브 뷰 샷, 이런 것들, 이런 앵글을 어떻게 잡고 편집을 어떤 그 타이밍에 하고 이런 것에 최대한 집중하는 그런 영화를 만들고 싶었습니다.
In other words, what I wanted to achieve in this film was to utilize the fundamental factors and elements that you commonly see in the films that makes the film the art form it is, whether it's just the regular shot, the reverse shot, the POV shot, or how those angles are done, or how those frames are edited in which frame. I wanted to focus on the core elements of what film makes the form it is to utilize to the most to be able to tell these emotions.
Right. Lukas, I wanted to ask you about the two the young men you had in your movie. I thought the performances of the two boys really extraordinary, and I'm curious where you found them, and if you could talk a little bit about that casting process for those two young actors.
Yeah, I think when we were writing the script, we realized that in order to portray this friendship on screen, and also that very fragile age, you know, when we're not children anymore and yet we're not teenagers yet, that moment between childhood and puberty, we needed two young human beings who were incredibly in touch with the inside and also ready to carry, I guess, the weight of a feature film. And what I did was I went looking in all the last years of primary school and the first years of secondary school in the schools in Brussels and around Brussels in order to try to find, you know, young talent and scout them. We saw over 580 boys who we gathered from all these schools. But then something really special happened, and I don't know if I should call it coincidence or destiny, but I was taking a train from Antwerp to Ghent, two cities in Belgium. I was listening to music and I look next to me and I see this young angel sitting, talking to his friends. And I didn't hear what he said because I had music in, so it was already a little bit of cinema for me. As I was watching his face being so expressive. And I thought, wow, this might be, you know, the person that we were looking for. I didn't know for sure, but I felt I'm going to regret if I don't go up to him and ask him if he wants to do a casting for this film. But I also thought, is this going to be incredibly creepy if I now in a train go up to a 12-year-old? And so I thought I'm going to do this really carefully. And also just because he was sitting with his friends, I thought, okay, so I went up to them and I asked him if he was interested. And he nearly shouted yes in this train. So I was like, okay, the enthusiasm is there. His mom read the script. He came to the castings. And what we actually did with all these young boys is, I think 20 minutes, in 20 minutes, you're not able to see their talents because they have never done this before. They're incredibly nervous. And so we worked in groups with all of them every time during a full day. So with groups of 30, we worked with them during a full day. It was a little bit of this workshop, not only for us, but also for them. And in one of these groups, Aiden, the young angel from the train, and Gustav were together. They had never met before. They had never acted before. But there was this chemistry between them. There was this spark between them that we saw from the beginning. And actually, we realized that a horizontal collaboration between them would be absolutely possible. Maybe even a friendship. And I think we saw many young, talented people, really a lot. But the two of them just really, the connection that they had from the beginning really made us realize that we wanted to work with them. And then before the last round of casting, they read the script because it was very important for me that it was not only us choosing them, but that it was also them choosing us. And we talked very openly about intimacy, about masculinity, about grief and guilt. And I think when you listen to 13-year-olds, you learn so much about the world because they don't have these filters on yet. They're not conformed yet to these ideas of society. They talk so purely from the heart. And actually, I think they added what they said, how they reflected on the script, made us add a lot of layers that I think come from them. I think they really became co-author of this film. And we rehearsed with them for 6 months, which I guess is something that I'm very lucky that we got the budget and that we got the production that allowed us to rehearse with them for 6 months. Because as they had never acted before, for me, it was really important to prepare them for all the elements of a film. Like they met every crew member beforehand. We built this intimacy and this family so that they would feel confident and ready to, when we actually had to shoot it, to also handle it with so much vulnerability and tenderness when it came to showing us their emotions in front of a camera. And the beauty of making this film was that we got to spend 3 years in the lives of these boys, all the way up from when they were 12 and kids to now 15, you know. One has become this little skater type. The other one is more flamboyant. And it's been beautiful to be a part of their lives for such an important moment.
Well, what you're saying there raises a question for me, for everyone really, which is, you know, the performances in all 5 of these movies are fantastic. And I'm curious from each of you, what your philosophy is in terms of what kind of environment you like to create on set to try to facilitate the actor's best work. We could start with you, Santiago.
Well, yeah, I think the relationship with actors and the relationship with acting in general is one of the things that I care the most in cinema, and how to pick who I work with. It's a process that it's not so special, but it's super important. I need to sort of. It's not only rehearsing and thinking about the film. It's also like becoming friends in a way. So I try to spend a lot of time, as Lukas said, but in a different way, because they are experienced actors, the ones that I work with, and to try to find the connections and the way where we can feel or think the same about cinema, and try to understand how we think about life and everything. So sometimes when I'm going to work with Ricardo or with Peter, who are the main actors of the films, just going to have a beer or going to have a dinner and to talk and to spend time together and to try to build the confidence that it's so important then to work together. Because I don't like this idea of the asymmetry, that the director is the one who is taking the decisions in the film. Because I like collaborations. I think the good things in cinema appear when you're collaborating. So I want to be able to feel insecure with the actors, to tell them that I don't know how I am going to solve the scene, and I don't know how the character thinks or whatever, and they need to help me also, as I will help them. So it's for me it's very important to build this connection with the main characters. Mainly in the film, then I have like 90 other characters that I don't have time to sometimes to make friends with, but at least with Ricardo and Peter, Laura, and Alejandra, who were the actors that were playing them more. It was very important to find these encounters beside the specific moment of working. And then in the rehearsing, it's not like I do a lot of rehearsing, but I do a lot of reading of the script. So because then the moment of acting is the moment when the camera is there, and when the feeding is there, when the lights and you're in the place, and not to push too much, and to trust that at that moment all that tension and all the environment that it's built for the acting, which is the core of the scene in the way I think cinema will appear. That's it.
Edward, how about you?
Similar to both Lukas and Santiago, I would say I really believe in collaboration. I really believe I feel like almost my task is to create an atmosphere on set, rather than that feels collaborative and open and safe. And it's almost setting a stage, you know, it's a stage. Okay, and and a stage that allows mistakes and errors and finding it, and where people feel confident that they can really screw it up. Yeah, because I screw up every day, basically, and all of us do. So in terms of this movie, I had a similar long casting process of seeing, I don't know, 500 young actors. And actually, Felix was the first actor I'd seen on a photograph. Someone had shown me a photograph, and I thought, this kid looks great, you know, because he has such a old-fashioned face, and he looks kind of frail, and and tender and has a sensitivity, not a hero's. He doesn't look like a hero that you would find in a different type of warm. So he felt like vulnerable. And so I really liked that. So I invited him, and probably 4 or 5 times, just to tell you about in terms of how much I believe in the casting process. I think for me, a lot of it is casting and finding the right people and putting the right people together so that everyone has that atmosphere. And so I probably spent 4, 5, 6 months casting this movie, and especially casting Felix. And I saw 500 kids, and he kept flying in. And I remember on the first rehearsal, he's similar. He had never been in front of a camera before. He just left drama school, and we found him in a theater. And so he was very innocent with the camera, and he didn't know how to deal with the camera. But I thought, okay, he has a great talent, but is he really gonna be that person? And also he felt very light and so forth. So next time I thought, okay, let's put some boots. You know how we all walk differently when we wear hiking boots as opposed to sneakers. So put some boots on him and a uniform, and immediately I felt, okay, he's inhabiting this role, and he really looked beautiful in this. I mean, it fit him somehow. This is still, it didn't feel out of period, and then so eventually I probably made him suffer a bit too much, maybe 4 or 5 months, and eventually I called him and said, okay, great, and he joined the cast, and then we all met in Prague, not for very long, for probably 2 or 3 weeks. To sort of, and I like mostly the scenes that I'm most scared of. I might try with my iPhone, and that I don't quite know how to film them yet, and I try to find the shot, and many of them I tried to 1 or 2 in one shot. So I needed to understand the coordination, the blocking of the actors, and there's like 4 or 5 of them, so it's always complicated, and you need to introduce them, and they all look a little bit the same under their helmets, and so how to do that. So we tried to figure that out in a gym, basically, just sort of filming with an iPhone, and that and then I think during that process, and then a lot I just talk and read with them, and then during that process you get to know each other so well that it feels that on set you have grown together, and by day 2 or 3, or maybe after the first, everyone starts feeling really comfortable and can let go, and everyone has their own rhythm too, and you need to allow that. Felix, for example, you said, all right, we're ready for you. He was there within 2 seconds. He was in front of the camera, and others took longer. And he's also very interesting. He made and I found this out only halfway through the shoot, because he comes from theater. He was afraid, and he didn't dare to share this with me in the beginning. So we needed to get closer. He was afraid of not acting a role from A to Z, like just to go through it from beginning to end and really feel. So he made this chart, and basically an Excel sheet that he showed to me, where he had three values added to his emotions. One was pulse. And he, from 0 to 100, he put a number to it. The next one was wish to survive, and the third one was urge to kill. And those 3 numbers sort of manifested, or sort of ended up in a graph on this Excel sheet. And so that he knew, oh, in scene 57, I'm going to have to be at this level. And in scene 56, I'm much lower. So maybe I seed something into this. So it gave him a help to seed things into the, and to create a continuity, to create an arc for his character. And I thought that was a brilliant idea of his.
Now, in RRR, the casting of the 2 leads is so important, because, they have to, there's the bond that they have, and their relationship goes through so many ups and downs, and you want the audience the whole time to kind of be in love with both of them, even when they're at odds with each other. So talk a little bit about casting those 2 roles and what the process was like in pre-production or rehearsal or prep, just working with them on, there's so much elaborate choreography in this movie, both dancing and acting, action choreography and everything else.
For us, it's a bit different. Most of our actors, and particularly Ramshan and Tarak, are not just great actors, they're great dancers, and they do their own stunts. They're expert in performing their stunts. So that's an additional advantage for the director. For me, how like I was answering your earlier question, I always wanted to bring two heroes together. So I literally brought them on board together before I had the story. So one day I called them home and said, I had this idea of doing a multi-starrer with you. I still don't have the idea, but if you're up to it, we'll go ahead. They said yes. They're good friends of me. We worked before and we had successes, and we had a long-standing relationship. So it was not difficult to bring them on board without having a story. Then once I started exploring this idea of bringing these freedom fighters together, simultaneously I was looking at their capabilities and how they look to me first. For me, Charan has this eyes. They look as if they're holding so much of pain. They look very beautiful. For me, Charan's eyes are very beautiful, and they look as if they're holding so much of pain. So so that's how we started etching out the character of Ram Raju. He holds so much of pain inside, but on the front of it, he looks like a very stoic guy. And for me, Bhim is very strong, but very innocent. And halfway through the film, there is a break in that innocence where he feels his friend has betrayed him, and that innocence is lost, and he becomes a hero on his own right. So it's actually their faces for me that helped me write this story. And the way we prepared was we followed this procedure called character designing. So we have a person in front of us, and me, the director, my story writers, and the character himself. For example, Bhim, we sit in front of this person, and he starts asking us questions about this character. The story is etched out, but he starts. Bhim is like, let's say he's a 25-year-old in the movie, and the movie is about for 6 months. But the questions are from the childhood of Bhim to the point of his death. So what was he like a child? What are his interests? What are his dislikes? Why did he dislike certain things? What are the reasons? And how did they change as a teenager? Why did they change as a teenager? And the person would bring out just imaginary scenes and ask us, how would Bhim react to that situation when he's a kid, when he's an adult, when he's an old man at the point of his death? How did he change from a kid to the man he died? Why did all that happen? And we used to discuss and write like thousands of notes about this character. Even though the story is just only 6 months of his life, we essentially wrote the entire life history of Bhim. Likewise with Ram. It was a very tedious process, but by the end of it, myself as a director, my story writers, and the actor who is playing the character had very clear idea about what Bhim is. And as an actor, he would bring his own perception to it, but we knew why he was doing that. There is no confusion or any kind of doubt on what the character was feeling at that particular point of time. How he would represent the actor would bring in different ideas, but what he wanted to deliver, there was utmost clarity for all of us. That's a beautiful process that we followed, and that helped me a lot in bringing out the performances from both actors.
Well, now, in terms of planning and blocking your scenes with your actors, how much do you plan ahead of time? Do you storyboard and shot list? And if so, how closely do you stick to those during shooting, or do you allow freedom for different things where you're responding to the actors on the day?
No, one thing I always say is that I have a locked script. The script is locked, but I don't throw the key away. I always keep it with me. So I do a lot because my films involve a lot of action sequences. Action sequences cost a lot of money. So I have to do a lot of pre-visualization. And it's not just storyboarding. We do storyboarding, we do concept arts, we do animated storyboards, we do previs, we do stunt viz. And sometimes I just bring my assistant directors, take iPhones like they were saying, and just shoot the scene with my assistant directors, asking them to play the characters. They would act very funnily, but they would do what is needed. And I edit that stuff, and I have the scene ready before I go to shoot. But for the action sequences, I need to prepare a lot. The first thing I do is like take the most iconic moment from that action sequence. For example, if the interval sequence, there is Beam jumping out of the truck with animals. So I sit with my concept artist and ask him to give me 4 or 5, any number of birds for that particular shot, then select one of them, and we start working on it to such a detailed level that it looks like as if it is one frame from the final product. So I sit with my production designer, my costume designer, my DOP, my visual effects artist. All of us are there contributing to that just one frame to get it perfectly. And by the time that exercise is done, all of us are very clear on what needs to be done. And they also understand what the other head of the department has to do for that particular sequence. Yeah, that's the process that I follow.
I'd like to ask basically the same question about decision to leave. How extensive is your pre-visualization process? Because the movie's visual style is very, very precise. And how do you communicate that with your actors and your crew? And how much freedom do you allow yourself from it once you're shooting?
제가 JSA라는 영화가 2000년에 만들었는데 제가 3번째 저의 영화였어요.
So in 2000, it was my third film called Joint Security Area that I directed.
근데 그 전에 2편의 영화가 완전히 박스오피스에서 실패를 했기 때문에 영화사에서 나에게 요구한 것이 이번 영화는 전체 스토리보드를 완벽하게 만들어 달라라는 것이었어요.
But the 2 previous films before Joint Security Area was a complete failure in the box office. So the production and the distribution company required and mandated that this film, when I was working on Joint Security Area, to provide them with a detailed storyboard before going into production.
말하자면 미리 이제 어떻게 만들 생각인지 봐야 이제 제작을 할 수 있겠다라는 것이죠.
In other words, they wanted to see what the final product they would be paying for to be able to convince to pay for it.
그런데 그러면서 하는 말이 할리우드에서는 다 그렇게 한다는 거예요. 그러니까 우리도 그러니까 당신을 못 믿겠으니까 스토리보드를 하라는 거 말할 수는 없으니까 나한테 그렇게 얘기했어요. 할리우드에서는 다 그렇게 한다고.
But what they said at the time was that this is how they do it in Hollywood. They couldn't tell me that they couldn't trust me on my work and ability. So they just framed it as this is how they do it in Hollywood, and this is how we're going to do it like Hollywood.
그래서 그때부터 제가 스토리보드를 전체를 하는 버릇이 이제 생겼습니다.
So from that moment is when I started building this habit of creating a full storyboard before going into the production of the film.
그래서 세월이 흘러서 내가 이제 할리우드에 와서 영화를 만들게 됐는데.
So over time, I'm finally here at Hollywood and still making films.
그래서 나 이렇게 한다라고 내 스토리보드를 보여줬더니 모든 할리우드 사람들이 막 너무 놀라면서 와 이런 일을 한단 말이에요. 그래서 다들 막 서로에 보여주면서 박찬욱 감독은 이렇게 한대. 그러면서 막 서로 다 수근수근 하더라고요.
So when I give them the storyboard and how I've been the habit that I've built over working over time, every crew member, everyone who works in Hollywood is so surprised and stunned, and they talk about how, oh, this is how the director Park Chan-wook does it.
그래서 그때서야 제가 그 속았다는 사실을 깨달았습니다.
And it's only then I realized that the company back in 2000 had not been being honest with me.
그래서 어쨌든 그런데 저는 그 방식이 마음에 들었어요. 그래서 계속 지금까지도 하고 있어요.
But all jokes aside, I kind of liked how the process of having a full storyboard going in. So I still keep that methodology when it comes to doing a storyboard.
뭐 액션 시퀀스가 아니어도 그냥 이렇게 두 사람이 앉아서 대화하는 장면까지도 완벽하게 편집이 끝난 형태로 만듭니다.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be any complicated action sequence in my case, but even if it's just two people sitting down and a very simplistic angle, every frame of the storyboard is as if it's the final product after edit of what the final product looked like to that much detail.
그래서 그것을 책으로 만들어서 촬영 시작하기 전에 모든 크루 멤버들과 배우에게 줍니다.
And turn that into a book, and I shared that with every actors and every crew member who's working on the production.
그것은 정말 만화책처럼 처음부터 읽으면 그냥 영화 하나 전체가 머릿속에 떠오를 정도로 자세하죠.
And it's detailed to a point where it reads like a comic book, where you could just understand the full film of what I envision or what the final product should be.
근데 제가 이렇게 하는 이유, 이게 좋은 이유는 이거예요. 현장에서 촬영 현장에서 뭐 카메라를 어디에 둘지, 뭐 이런 조명을 어떻게 할지 이런 것에 대해서 대화할 필요가 없다는 거예요. 미리 그들은 다 알고 있으니까. 저는 배우들하고만 얘기를 하면 됩니다.
What I really enjoy, the benefits of having detailed storyboard is that when you're on set, I don't need to be talking about where I want the cameras to be positioned. I don't need to think about where the lighting needs to come from. The only thing I can do is solely focus on communicating with my actors.
물론 프리프로덕션 단계에서도 배우들과 많은 대화를 하지만 현장에서는 또 새로운 상황이니까 현장에서 배우들과 어떻게 연기를 할 것이냐에만 오로지 집중합니다.
Of course, I still have extensive level of communication with my actors in pre-production phase, but on set is a different environment and there are different factors to consider. So, but I try to give all my time to communicating and collaborating with the actors.
프리프로덕션 단계에서는 배우들과 이제 뭐 이렇게 움직이는 리허설은 안 하고요. 앉아서 각본 한 줄 한 줄에 관해서 이야기를 하죠.
During pre-production, I don't really necessarily enact or reenact or move around in physical space, but we sit down, but we go line by line and do a script reading to make sure that we're on the same page.
이거는 리허설도 아니고 리딩도 아니고 정확히 말하자면 토론 같은 것입니다.
It's not necessarily a rehearsal or even a script reading, but it's more about having a discussion.
제가 정말 글자 그대로 지문 포함해서 지문과 대사 모든 것을 한 줄 한 줄 함께 읽으면서 내가 왜 이렇게 썼는지에 대해서 말해주고 배우의 의견을 구하고 이렇게 논쟁도 하고 합니다.
So I go by letter, word by word, including all the guides and all the description. We read line by line together as a group. And I also try to take the time to explain why I wrote it certain lines that way, why certain guidelines are written that way. And I even open it up to conversations, and there are points where we debate about what the best way to portray certain lines are.
해지 결심의 경우에는 그런 토론을 어디서 했냐면은 탕웨이의 집에서 했어요. 좀 도시에서 벗어난 정원주택에서 살고 있었는데 탕웨이가 좀 농사꾼이거든요. 배우보다도 농사를 더 좋아해요. 연기보다. 그래서 그녀가 직접 재배한 야채를 뽑아서 씻어서 먹으면서 그렇게 계속 오랫동안 얘기를 했죠.
For decision to leave, that debate and discussion took place in Tangwei's house, which is a suburb a bit away from the city. And I don't know if you know about this about her, but her main job is a farmer before she's an actor. So we were eating through all of her vegetable garden and going through to discuss and have this debate on the script.
그래서 여름이었는데 아주 햇빛이 찬란한 정원에서 그 밭에서 그 당연히가 직접 재배한 야채를 먹어가면서 그 햇빛 속에서 그 많은 대화를 했던 것이 정말 아름다운 추억으로 기억됩니다.
It was right into the beginning of a summer when we were having this conversation, and we were sitting in the garden bathed in this beautiful sunlight, going through this literal farm to table vegetables that Tang Wei personally made. And this is still to this day really one of my best memories of working on this film, is going through those scripts with my actors.
그리고 저 12살짜리 아이들 데리고 연출하는 감독이 누릴 수 없는 럭셔리는 뭐였냐면 이제 우리는 함께 와인을 마실 수 있었다는 거죠.
And all the other directors who, what they weren't able to do with working with all the teenager was that we also had lots of wine in the process.
I think we have time for a few audience questions. So we're going to bring up a microphone that we're going to put here since we're live streaming it so that everybody can hear the audience questions. And I think if you have a question in the audience here, sorry. Oh, I do need to repeat them. We're not going to have a mic. Oh, okay. Oh, so, okay. All right, I guess we're going to we are putting up a mic and we're going to have a line. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, so go ahead and ask your question. I guess we're not going to have a mic. I'll repeat the question for the thing. So, yeah.
You know, like when you do the budget here, like how you got funding, did you fund yourself, or like got funding to you, or some company fund for your movie?
The question for each of you is how you got the funding for your movies.
예, 저는 한국의 CJ라는 그 스튜디오가 있고 늘 그 같은 회사와 계속 해오고 있고요. 그래서 뭐 인디펜던트로 만들진 않습니다.
I have a long-standing relationship with CJ&M, which is a distribution and production company that funded this film. So I haven't worked on an independent film in a while, but I work with production companies or companies that fund our budget.
탕웨이는 아시아권 최고의 스타이기 때문에 너무 큰 예산이 아니잖아요. 또 이 영화는 사랑 얘기고 그러니까 펀딩에 어려움을 겪진 않았어요.
Because Tang Wei was one of the biggest female Asian actors in the Eastern Hemisphere, and because the film itself wasn't as a blockbuster level of a big production as it was a romance story, it wasn't as difficult to get funded for this project.
In India, at least in south of India, where I come from, there is no studio system. So the producers raise their own finances, and the financiers approve the finances based on the track record of the director and mainly the stars and the director. Is the combination, the craze of the combination that's in the audience defines how easily the finances are raised. Luckily for me, I have a string of successes, so it's not difficult for the producer to raise the finances, a part of it. And also there is a part of it also comes from the pre-sale of the films, like whether it's the satellite or the OTTs, the rights for the OTTs, and sometimes some areas in India itself, they're pre-sold before the film is released. They're pre-sold, and the film is completed with all these monies put together.
Let's go. Sure, Lukas.
Yeah, I wanted to add to Park Chan-wook before that it's true I didn't get to have wine, but I had a lot of pancakes, like a lot of them. So I think the beauty of making a film in Europe, for example, Belgium, is that we have these support systems from the governments to which we can hand in dossiers and ask for money, and that if we get so lucky to go all the way through, that by combining a few governments, we can gather a budget, and we're not dependent on studios or big production companies. We can really make these pieces as radical as we want to make them, because we can get the support of these governments. And I think that is a really beautiful thing, and has allowed me and us as a team to make 2 films now with little budgets, but in the way that we wanted to make them. This film is a co-production between Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. And with the money that we could combine from these countries, we were able to make this film. It stays a little budget, but it was enough for us to make this piece. And I think for all of us, it was really important to be able to tell this story and to be able to make this film in the radical way that we wanted to make it, and not make any compromises, but just really stay on that vision that we had for it, and really make it the way that we believed it should be made.
Santiago, how did you get funding for your film?
Yeah, well, it's different in the other films, but in this case, but the thing that I try to defend the most is the developing process. I have a small production company that is called La Unión de los Ríos. It's a Buenos Aires-based company that I share with my partner, and we develop my projects and other projects, and we try to build the most that we can. The script, well, some scouting, some casting, and then trying to look for the right partners. In this case, during the developing, because I knew that I wanted to work with Ricardo Darín, and Ricardo Darín is a big star, a big money bringer for projects, and he's also my friend. So and he got involved very quickly also as a producer of the film. So we ended the developing of the film together, and then once we had part of the casting and a script that we trusted a lot, we went to talk to the people from Amazon Studios, and they jumped in the film very quickly. So it was well, we were lucky, and the film was financed very quickly.
And Edward?
We took it 2020. We took it to the Berlin film market, the European film market, at the Berlin Film Festival, with a script, the producer, myself as the director, and Daniel Brühl was, because he's a friend of ours, was attached, but to a small role, because he's too old to play the kids in the trench. So we had just this role for him, and he was gracious enough to accept it and help us with it. He's also a partner in Maltes, in my producer's production company. So that brought sort of a family together. And so the 4 of us, the 3 of us plus script, took it to the market and spoke to buyers, but just spoke to just a traditional way in terms of pre-sales to, every country and trying to raise the money like that. But very quickly, it became apparent that for a German language movie, the budget is limited that you can reach with pre-sales, because a lot of it goes away for bank fees and things like that. So there's a lot of costs involved with raising money like that too. And but we were lucky enough that the title of the book, All Quiet, is so well known that people just wanted it, I guess. A lot of different buyers wanted it. And in the end, Netflix was the one that was most passionate about it, most persistent, and most adamant about leaving us the freedom to do to want to bring our vision to the screen. They really were very, very supportive and saying, we want to make your movie. That's what they kept saying, and they kept calling. And to receive many phone calls and emails sort of is a proof of that passion, and that made that decision in the end very easy to make that movie with them.
Yeah, I might actually, let me see if I can reach, maybe I can pull my mic over here for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm a student of filmmaking, and I wanted to know from you all if there's any advice for aspiring and budding filmmakers. Any one advice you'd suggest from your process? Thank you.
Who wants to take that one? Come on, you guys must have advice for aspiring filmmakers.
So I have one. Can I say one? And I only got it from an interview. I've never met him, unfortunately, but I only got it from an interview that I read with Steven Spielberg. And he said, I think he gave it to Sam Mendes on his first movie, An American Beauty. And he said, wear comfortable shoes. And so I try to adhere to that, and I always wear really comfortable shoes on my sets.
Anybody else have any advice for aspiring filmmakers they want to share?
예, 저는 감독의 머릿속에서 모든 것이 나온다라는 그런 미신을 빨리 버리라고 말하고 싶어요. 모든 것은 크루들, 배우들과의 대화, 상호작용 속에서 탄생합니다.
The advice I'd like to give is to let go of this urban myth or this idea that everything creative comes out of a director's head. The true creative also sources from crews, the communication with the actors. So the earlier you get to understand, acknowledge that, the better director you'll be.
그래서 가끔 자기가 아무 생각이 없이 머리가 하얘질 때 있잖아요. 어떻게 해야 될지 모를 때. 그럴 때조차도 그냥 솔직하게 말하잖아요. 지금 어떻게 될지 모르겠어. 카메라 어디다 둘까? 또 배우에게도 연기를 어떻게 해? 이 샷은 어떻게 연기하고 싶어요? 라고 묻기를 주저하지 마세요.
So when you're on set, sometimes you just draw a blank and you don't know what to do next. It's okay to be honest, to communicate it with the people around you. Ask their team, where do you think we should put the cameras? Ask the actors, what kind of physical body language you want to carry in this conversation. It's the moment you're able, because it's not only on you, if you're able to communicate it, the true synergy comes from the collaboration.
So my question is for Rajamouli, sir. I grew up watching your movies. I don't know if you remember me, I think in like 2013, before you had even started working on Bahubali, I was writing a high school essay about Telugu cinema, and you invited me home. It was Sri Ramanavami. You fed my mom and I lunch. And I told you at the time, the question before me is so timely. I told you at the time that I was thinking about going to film school, and you were the only Indian filmmaker at the time that I'd met who encouraged me to do that. And I'm here today as a writer in Los Angeles, and I get to see people celebrate you. It's been amazing. But my question quickly was about the CGI in RRR. I think in one of the Telugu interviews that you did in India, you talked about animating the tiger and the sequence and how you use local film students to do it. If you could just tell that, I think anyone who appreciates cinema would love to hear that story. So if you could just tell it in English for the audience here, I think everyone would appreciate that.
Can you come again? What did I tell in that interview?
It was about animating the tiger for the NTR sequences, and you had talked about animating the tiger first and like trying to figure out how to make it look realistic, using local Ukraine film students, all of that.
There were two different things. Like one is that I love animals. I love bringing them into the scenes. Obviously, we can't use live animals. I have to resort to CGI. And over the period of years, I have seen many films where the quality of CGI has increased by leaps and bounds, and all the details of the animals were so good, but the shot itself was not working for some reason. So I sat with my VFX supervisor, and we were trying to figure out what is wrong with the particular shot. And what we figured out was that the speed of the animal is always wrong. In the sense, imagine there is a shot with an actor and the animal running. and during the shot, the animal is not there. So all of us are assuming the animal is running or moving at certain speed, and we make the actors act to it. But what we get grossly wrong is the speed of the animal is unimaginably high. Because we already shot the shot and we already edited it. Now the animator is locked with the timing. So the animator has to animate the animal into that time frame, which most of the time goes wrong. So this is what we deduced for ourselves, and we sought to correct that. What we need to do is like do the animation first. So we did the animations first, then we combined that with actors. It was a lot of pre-production process, trial and error process, where we are having on the one monitor we are having the animated animals, not with full quality, but with but the animations and the speeds were right, and we were checking whether the shot was working, and we shot it that way. So the next problem was like, how do all the actors understand? As a director, I'm sitting in the monitor, I understand how the animal is moving, but how does all the actors, for example, in the interval sequence, there are like thousands of actors, how do all of them know how the animal is moving? How do they give the right eye movement? So then we took the help of a few geeks, and we gave them the animated animal. So they came out with a small device. They placed small LED lights for the placement of, for example, a tiger is running. So every 10 frames, they would place a LED bulb, LED bulb, and they would, on action, they would strike it, and the light would move. So everyone would know, okay, that's the tiger traveling. If it's a red light, it's a tiger. If it's a blue light, it's a leopard. If it's a green light, it's a deer. So forth. So then all the actors knew where to look, and also the cameraman knew how to pan his camera, how to move his camera. So yeah, that's how we did that sequence.
We're already running over on time, but I'm going to squeeze a couple more in. Thanks. This is for SS and Park Chan-wook. Spielberg will go back and watch some of his favorite movies before he starts a new project, like Lawrence of Arabia, to inspire him. I was wondering if there's any movies that you repeatedly go back to watch before you start a new project. And a personal question for Park Chan-wook. I lived in Korea as a Yonggol 선생님 for a while, and I was wondering, my Korean's really bad, but 어떤 한국 soup 완전 좋아요? What's your favorite Korean soup?
Was the first question also for Director Park?
A favorite movie that you like to go,
that was
or
also
a
for
few
him.
movies that you go back to inspire you before you
예, 저는 다른 감독의 진짜? 예, 저는 제 영화를 다시 보는 일을 별로 좋아하지는 않고요. 남의 영화들에 대해서도 특정한 영화를 만들 때, 이 작품 해외 결심 만들 때는 저 영화를 참고해야 되겠다, 이런 생각은 하는 타입의 감독은 아닙니다.
I didn't know that Spielberg does that, but I usually don't enjoy going back to my old films or work to watch it again myself. And and also for Decision to Leave or any project I work on, I'm not the type of a director who has a reference film that I look at before producing or creating or directing a film.
그리고 코리안 숲, 저는 냉면, 평양식 콜드 누들스를 제일 좋아합니다.
So I love 평양냉면, which is a North Korean style of a cold buckwheat ice noodle. Yes. 냉면, yes.
I mean, I visit my favorite films again and again, not necessarily at the beginning of a new film to get inspired from them. To say one example, I said this many times. Ben-Hur, I love the movie. I watch it again and again, and particularly the chariot sequence. I watch it. I don't know how many times I have seen it, hundreds of times, and the shot of 4 black horses, 4 white horses running at full gallop, and the camera tracking absolutely perfectly alongside them. Oh my God, I see it so many times.
Okay, unfortunately, this is going to have to be the last question.
Yeah, I feel so lucky. My legs are trembling and I'm so nervous, but Rajamouli sir, just thank you so much. You know, people usually think of Bollywood films like as Indian films, like I'm a film student here, and bringing like an Indian film just so rooted to our culture. And it is really a prestigious moment for all of us, and even for crossing boundaries. And thank you so much, sir. So just one thing. And the second thing, it is so surreal for me. Park sir, like Park Chan-wook, I'm a huge fan of your works. Right from Joint Security Area, you don't know how I feel right now. Old Boy, the ringtone of Old Boy has been, the background score of Old Boy has been my ringtone for long years. And I almost watched all of your works, your interviews, and I have, a huge photo frame of Old Boy in my bedroom. And I'll come back. I'll come to my question. Just sorry. And the way you handle male-female relationship. And I'm studying at New York Film Academy. I don't know like what I have done 1 year, but this moment for me to come here and to see you in person. Oh my God. So I would thank my college and whatever process I've gone through. Okay. Love you. And your films mean a lot to me, like a lot. I mean it in my personal life also, like they mean a lot. It makes life so much easier. It makes life so much simple. It teaches me, even though your movies are so violent, no, they teach me how to be more peaceful and to be calm, with life. Okay, sorry. My question is like, yeah, this is the moment I should take the opportunity, sorry. My question is like, for each shot in your films, like, do you really dig deep into like, this is how I should, choose my short list or short division for each frame? Like, do you really work into the frames? Like, for example, like it's the master or something like it really, do you really want it to be a Park Chan-wook like short, or it's just what the story demands and you just go with the flow of the story?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that in a simpler question?
Here, I'll simplify.
I understood most of it.
The question is about
question.
the question is about planning your shots. How do you?
저는 그러니까 보통 저를 뭐 스타일리스틱하다라든가 뭐 비주얼리스트다라는 말도 자주 듣는데 사실 저는 그렇게 그런 비주얼한 면을 최우선으로 두진 않아요.
So I often get that people often refer to my taste or style of work as stylistic, and I would often refer to me as a visualist. But in fact, in reality, I usually don't prioritize the visual aspect of the frames as much as people think I do.
저는 좀 구식이에요. 그래서 언제나 스토리, 캐릭터가 제일 중요하고요. 그것을 가장 이 두 가지를 가장 정확하게 표현하는 방법으로서 샷 구성을 생각합니다.
So I guess you can call me more of an old school where the priority for me is the story and the character. And I think about the shot and the frame, which afterward to make sure to prioritize and to portray the story and the character first.
그렇기 때문에 가장 정확한 표현 방법이 무엇인가를 고민하는 결과. 왜냐하면 작품마다 항상 캐릭터와 스토리는 새로우니까 거기에만 가장 정확한 샷을 구상을 하면 언제나 새로운 앵글과 새로운 뭐 카메라 무브먼트와 새로운 라이팅이 자연스럽게 따라오는 것 같습니다.
So because of that, I think I spend more time thinking about what is the most optimal way of portraying this story or the character. And if you think about it, every storyline and every character is different than the one I worked in before. So when I come up with a shot that is adequate or that has the best synergy to portray that, I often find myself finding a new angle, new camera movement, and new lighting that is a result from trying to create the best storytelling.
요점을 말하자면 이거예요. 이 어떻게 찍으면 멋있을까가 아니고요. 그게 중요한 게 아니라 어떻게 찍어야 이 스토리와 캐릭터를 정확하게 묘사할 것인가. 이것이 중요하다는 겁니다.
So to be more, I guess if I were to summarize, it shouldn't be about what shot should I shoot that's going to look better visually, but it's about what's going to be more cool from other people. But it's more about how do I create the shot to adequately and accurately portray the story and the character and the emotion I want to deliver to the audience is how you should think about this process.
Great. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. I feel like we're just getting started, but it's been wonderful having you all. Thank you so much for your great films and for taking the time to talk with us about them. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, bye, Lucas. Bye, Edward. Hope to see you soon.
Bye, Edward and Santiago.
Hey, good luck at NBR tonight.
Thank
Or
you.
have
Yes.
fun. And good luck at the Golden Globes.
Good luck
see
with this shoot.
See you tonight, Lucas.
Yeah, see you tonight. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.